Little girl faints in class after going to live with dad. Teacher spots belly, calls 911 in panic. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. It was a rainy Tuesday morning when Mrs. Thompson first noticed little Ellie Parker sitting alone at the back of her first-grade classroom. There was something different about this child, something in those large brown eyes that seemed to carry the weight of the world. "Good morning, everyone," Mrs. Thompson said with her usual warmth, adjusting her reading glasses as she scanned the classroom of eager 6-year-olds. "Today we're going to draw our families." The children cheered, all except Ellie, who simply clutched her stomach and winced. At 55, Catherine Thompson had taught hundreds of children over her 30-year career. She prided herself on knowing when something wasn't right, and something definitely wasn't right with Ellie Parker. "Are you feeling okay, sweetheart?" Mrs. Thompson knelt beside Ellie's desk, while the other children busily scribbled with colorful crayons. Ellie nodded silently, her small hand still pressed against her belly. "My tummy hurts a little," she finally whispered, "but Daddy says I always say that." Mrs. Thompson noticed Ellie's lunchbox was still full, the sandwich untouched, the apple unbitten. This was the third day in a row. "Would you like to visit the nurse?" she asked gently. Ellie shook her head. "She already gave me crackers yesterday. It didn't help." As the drawing session continued, Mrs. Thompson walked around the classroom, admiring the colorful family portraits emerging on each desk. When she reached Ellie's paper, her heart sank. Unlike the cheerful family scenes her classmates had created, Ellie's drawing showed a small figure standing alone in a house with a much larger figure lying on what appeared to be a couch. Dark clouds hovered overhead. "Can you tell me about your drawing, Ellie?" Mrs. Thompson asked softly. "That's me." Ellie pointed to the small figure. "And that's Daddy. He's always tired." "And where's your mommy in the picture?" Ellie's face clouded over. "She went away with Uncle Mike. She's not coming back." As the school day progressed, Mrs. Thompson couldn't shake her concern. During recess, while the other children ran and played, Ellie sat on a bench holding her stomach. At lunch, she barely touched her food. Later, during story time, Mrs. Thompson noticed something else. Ellie's school uniform seemed tighter around the middle than it had been just weeks ago. The child's belly appeared noticeably distended beneath her plaid jumper. When the final bell rang, Mrs. Thompson watched as the children rushed into the waiting arms of parents. All except Ellie, who walked slowly to the pickup area where a neighbor woman waited impatiently. "Where's your father today, Ellie?" Mrs. Thompson asked, approaching them. "He's resting," the neighbor replied. Curtly, "I pick her up on Tuesdays and Thursdays." That evening, as rain tapped against her kitchen window, Catherine Thompson sat with a cup of tea, unable to stop thinking about Ellie. In 30 years of teaching, she'd developed an instinct about these things. Tomorrow, she decided she would speak to the school nurse again. As she prepared for bed, her phone chimed with a new email. It was a homework submission from Ellie, a simple writing assignment about my favorite thing. Most children had written about toys or pets. Ellie's single sentence made Catherine's heart freeze. "My favorite thing would be if someone believed me when I say it hurts." The following morning, Catherine Thompson arrived at Westbrook Elementary earlier than usual. She headed straight for the nurse's office, clutching Ellie's concerning homework in her hand. "Nancy, do you have a minute?" she asked, finding Nurse Wilson organizing student medication files. "For you, Catherine. Always." The nurse smiled, gesturing to a chair. "Is this about little Ellie Parker again?" Mrs. Thompson nodded, smoothing the printed email on the desk. "She's complained of stomach pain 3 days straight. She's not eating. And look what she wrote for homework." Nurse Wilson read the single sentence and frowned. "I gave her crackers and checked her temperature yesterday. No fever. Could be anxiety. I understand her home situation is complicated." "There's more," Mrs. Thompson continued. "Have you noticed her abdomen? It's visibly distended. I'm wondering if we should contact her father directly." The nurse sighed, removing her glasses. Catherine, you have the biggest heart of any teacher here, but we both know some children use stomach aches to get attention, especially when there's trouble at home. This feels different, Mrs. Thompson insisted. Will you at least look at her again today? Before class began, Mrs. Thompson arranged her students' desks into groups for their science project. When Ellie entered the classroom, Catherine immediately noticed her sluggish movements and the way her uniform strained across her middle. "Good morning, Ellie," she said warmly. "How are you feeling today?" "Okay," Ellie whispered, but the dark circles under her eyes told a different story. During the morning lesson, Mrs. Thompson kept a watchful eye on her, while other children eagerly mixed colors for their science experiment. Ellie barely participated, occasionally wincing and holding her stomach. At recess, Catherine made her way to the staff room where she found Principal Garner reviewing budget reports. "Jim, I need to discuss a student situation," she began, explaining her concerns about Ellie. The principal listened politely, then leaned back in his chair. "Have you spoken with her father?" "I've tried calling twice. No response." "Look, Catherine," he said gently, "we both know you've always had a soft spot for the troubled ones. But we need to be careful about overstepping. The nurse has seen her. If there's no fever or obvious illness, our hands are tied." Later that day, during art class, the children were creating family portraits with modeling clay. Mrs. Thompson noticed Ellie had made only 2 figures, one small, one large, standing far apart. "Who's this, Ellie?" she asked, pointing to the larger figure. "That's Daddy," Ellie said quietly. "And what's Daddy doing in your picture?" Ellie's voice dropped to a whisper. "Sleeping. He sleeps a lot. And where are you in this picture?" "Making my own dinner. I can make cereal and sandwiches. Because I'm not allowed to use the stove." Mrs. Thompson felt a chill run through her body. 6-year-olds shouldn't be preparing their own meals. As the day ended, Catherine made a decision. Inside her desk drawer was a stack of emergency contact cards. She pulled out Ellie's and noted the address. Tomorrow was Saturday. Perhaps a home visit might provide answers where phone calls had failed. That night, as she graded papers, Mrs. Thompson couldn't stop thinking about the little girl with the painful belly and sad eyes. Her own empty nest felt particularly hollow tonight. Years ago, she had dreamed of having children of her own, but life had taken a different turn. She picked up her phone to check tomorrow's weather and noticed a new email notification. Another homework submission from Ellie. This time it was a drawing labeled, "What's Inside Me," showing a small stick figure with a large circle in the middle. Inside the circle was something dark and ominous. Catherine Thompson couldn't sleep that night. Saturday morning arrived with gentle sunshine streaming through Catherine Thompson's kitchen windows. She sat at her breakfast table, staring at her untouched toast while rehearsing what she might say to Ellie's father. After 30 years of parent-teacher conferences, she rarely felt nervous. But today was different. This wasn't a scheduled meeting about grades or behavior. By 10 o'clock, Mrs. Thompson found herself driving through an unfamiliar neighborhood. Maple Creek Apartments wasn't the worst housing complex in town, but the peeling paint and overflowing trash bins suggested better days had come and gone. Apartment 14B was on the 2nd floor. Mrs. Thompson smoothed her cardigan, took a deep breath, and knocked firmly on the door. No answer. She knocked. Again, louder this time. Finally, the door creaked open just enough to reveal a disheveled man with reddened eyes and several days' stubble. "Mr. Parker, I'm Catherine Thompson, Ellie's teacher." The man squinted at her. "Is there a problem?" "I've been trying to reach you by phone. I'm concerned about Ellie's health." She maintained her professional smile. "May I come in for a moment?" He hesitated, then reluctantly opened the door wider. The apartment's interior shocked her. Fast food containers littered every surface, clothes were strewn across furniture, and the unmistakable odor of neglect hung in the air. "Ellie's at her Saturday program," Mr. Parker muttered, clearing takeout boxes from a chair. "The community center thing." Catherine remained standing. "Mr. Parker, Ellie has been complaining of severe stomach pain. Her appetite has decreased, and I've noticed her abdomen appears swollen. Have you taken her to a doctor? Kids get stomach aches, he shrugged. She's always saying something hurts. This seems more serious, Mrs. Thompson persisted. I'm worried there might be a medical issue that needs attention. Look, his tone sharpened. I appreciate your concern, but I'm handling it. She's fine. Probably just constipated or something. As they spoke, Catherine's eyes fell on a refrigerator nearly empty except for beer cans and a half-empty pizza box. No fresh food, no fruit, nothing a growing child needed. Mr. Parker, I'd be happy to provide some resources. There are community programs that offer— We don't need charity, he interrupted. Is that all? I work nights and need to sleep. Catherine realized this approach wasn't working. Of course. Thank you for your time. Please call me if you notice Ellie's condition worsening. Back in her car, Mrs. Thompson sat motionless, her hands gripping the steering wheel. The situation was worse than she'd imagined. Her instincts told her Ellie needed help. But what could she do? She wasn't family. She was just a teacher. Monday morning brought a staff meeting before classes. Mrs. Thompson arrived determined to rally support. I visited Ellie Parker's home, she explained to the gathered teachers and administrators. The conditions were concerning. The child is clearly in pain, and her father seems uninterested. School counselor Diane Matthews frowned. Did you document your observations? We'd need that for any formal report. No, Catherine faltered. It was an unofficial visit. Principal Garner sighed heavily. Catherine, we've discussed boundaries before. You can't just show up at students' homes unannounced. But this child needs help, she insisted. Something is wrong with her physically and no one is listening. We're all concerned about our students, the principal replied. But there are protocols. If you suspect neglect, file a proper report. Meanwhile, please maintain professional boundaries. As students arrived, Catherine watched the entrance anxiously. When Ellie finally appeared, her heart sank. The child looked paler than ever, her school uniform now visibly tight around her distended middle. During morning circle, while the children shared weekend stories, Ellie remained silent, one hand constantly pressed against her belly. Ellie, Mrs. Thompson said gently, would you like to go see Nurse Wilson? Ellie shook her head. She doesn't believe me either, she whispered. Those 7 words would haunt Catherine Thompson for a long time to come. Tuesday morning's sky hung heavy with storm clouds, matching Catherine Thompson's mood as she prepared her classroom. Last night she'd barely slept, Ellie's words echoing in her mind. She doesn't believe me either. Today would be different. Catherine had spent the evening researching possible causes of abdominal distension in children. She'd printed medical information, prepared a formal documentation log, and even drafted a letter for Ellie's father requesting medical authorization. As the children filed into the classroom, Mrs. Thompson immediately noticed Ellie's absence. By 9:15, with no sign of the girl, Catherine asked a teacher's aide to watch her class and hurried to the front office. Has Ellie Parker been called in sick today? She asked the secretary. No call from Mr. Parker, came the reply. Should I try the emergency contact? Just then, the front door opened. Catherine turned to see Ellie shuffling in, looking utterly exhausted. The neighbor who sometimes picked her up was guiding her by the shoulder. Sorry, she's late, the woman said curtly. Her dad overslept. Catherine knelt to Ellie's level. Good morning, sweetheart. How are you feeling today? Ellie's eyes were glassy. Tired. My tummy really hurts today, Mrs. Thompson. I know, honey. I believe you. Catherine gently touched Ellie's forehead. It felt clammy but not feverish. Back in the classroom, the children were starting their morning writing assignment. Catherine helped Ellie to her seat, alarmed at how the child's breathing seemed labored just from the short walk. Class, please continue your stories about your favorite animal, Mrs. Thompson instructed. I'll be right back. In the hallway, she dialed the number for Nurse Wilson's office. Nancy, I need you to come see Ellie Parker immediately. This isn't just a stomachache. While waiting, For the nurse, Catherine knelt beside Ellie's desk. "Sweetie, can you show me where it hurts the most?" Ellie pointed to her lower abdomen, which Catherine now noticed was even more visibly distended than yesterday. The child's uniform buttons strained against the swelling. When Nurse Wilson arrived, her professional demeanor faltered slightly at the sight of Ellie. "Let's get you to my office, dear," she said, her voice gentler than usual. In the nurse's office, Catherine watched anxiously as Nancy conducted a basic examination. "Ellie, does it hurt when I press here?" the nurse asked, gently touching different areas of the child's abdomen. Ellie nodded, wincing. "How long has your tummy been getting bigger like this?" Nurse Wilson asked. "A long time," Ellie whispered. "First my clothes got tight, then it started hurting all the time." The nurse and teacher exchanged concerned glances. "Catherine, can I speak with you outside?" Nurse Wilson asked, her expression grave. In the hallway, the nurse lowered her voice. "This isn't normal bloating or constipation. Her abdomen is significantly distended and firm to the touch. She needs medical attention immediately." "I'll call her father," Catherine said, reaching for her phone. "And I'll document everything for a medical referral," the nurse added. "You were right to be concerned." Back in the classroom, Catherine assigned group work while she made the call. No answer from Mr. Parker. She left an urgent message, then called the emergency contact number. The neighbor woman sounded annoyed but agreed to contact Ellie's father. Mrs. Thompson returned to find her students working quietly, all except for Ellie's empty desk. "Where's Ellie?" she asked, a note of alarm in her voice. "She went to the bathroom, a little break," girl replied. Catherine hurried down the hall to the children's restroom. "Ellie, are you in there, sweetheart?" A faint whimper came from inside one of the stalls. "Ellie, please unlock the door, honey." When the door swung open, Catherine gasped. Ellie was on the floor, curled into a ball, her face ashen. "It hurts so much," she sobbed. Catherine gathered the small child in her arms, shocked at how the girl's distended abdomen felt rock hard against her chest. "It's going to be okay, Ellie. I promise. We're going to get you help." As she carried Ellie back toward the nurse's office, the little girl suddenly went limp in her arms. "Ellie! Ellie!" Catherine called frantically. The child's eyes had rolled back, her body completely slack. "Someone call 911!" Mrs. Thompson shouted, her voice echoing down the empty hallway. "Now!" The ambulance's siren wailed through the normally quiet streets surrounding Westbrook Elementary. Inside the school, chaos had erupted. Children pressed their faces against classroom windows while teachers struggled to maintain order. In the nurse's office, Catherine Thompson knelt beside the examination bed where Ellie lay unconscious, the nurse checking her vital signs. "Blood pressure's low," Nurse Wilson murmured, her professional composure finally cracking. "I should have examined her more thoroughly days ago." The paramedics arrived with remarkable speed, rushing a stretcher through the hallways. Students watched wide-eyed as the medical team carefully transferred the small figure onto the stretcher. Female, approximately 6 years old, unconscious with severe abdominal distension, one paramedic reported into his radio. "Pulse rapid, but weak." "Are you family?" another asked Catherine. "I'm her teacher. Her father isn't answering his phone." "Someone needs to come with her. Hospital policy for minors." Without hesitation, Catherine replied, "I'll go." As they loaded Ellie into the ambulance, Principal Garner appeared, breathless from running. "Catherine, what's happening?" "Ellie collapsed. I'm going with her to the hospital." She climbed into the ambulance. "Please keep trying to reach her father." The ride to Mercy General Hospital took only minutes, but to Catherine it felt like hours. She held Ellie's small hand, whispering reassurances, though the child couldn't hear her. At the emergency entrance, the ambulance doors burst open. Medical staff swarmed around the stretcher, firing questions that Catherine could barely answer. "Any known medical conditions?" "Not that I'm aware of." "When did the abdominal distension begin?" "I noticed it about 2 weeks ago, but I believe it's been longer." "Any medications?" "None that I know of." "Where are her parents?" "Her father. We're trying to reach him." Ellie disappeared behind swinging doors, leaving Catherine alone in the waiting area, still wearing her cardigan with the apple-shaped brooch her students had given her last teacher appreciation day. She felt helpless, clutching her phone and willing it to ring with news from the school about Mr. Parker. After what seemed an eternity, a doctor emerged, a woman with kind eyes and a serious expression. "Are you here with the Parker child?" "Yes, I'm her teacher, Catherine Thompson." "How is she?" "She's stabilized, but we need to run tests immediately. Her abdomen contains a significant amount of fluid. We're preparing her for an ultrasound and possibly a CT scan." Catherine nodded, trying to process this information. What could cause that in a child her age? The doctor hesitated. "There are several possibilities, some more concerning than others." Just then, two nurses walked past, speaking in hushed tones. Catherine caught fragments of their conversation. So young. Possible pregnancy test. Her blood ran cold. Surely they couldn't be talking about Ellie. It was impossible. She was only 6 years old. The waiting room television flickered with local news. Catherine's attention was drawn to the scrolling text at the bottom of the screen. Breaking. Local elementary student rushed to hospital with mysterious condition. How had the news traveled so quickly? She turned away, sickened by the thought of Ellie becoming a headline. Her phone finally rang. The school secretary. "Mrs. Thompson, we've reached Mr. Parker. He's on his way to the hospital." An hour later, Catherine sat beside Ellie's bed in a curtained examination area. The child had regained consciousness but remained groggy from medication. Various monitors beeped steadily, and an IV line delivered fluids to her thin arm. "Mrs. Thompson?" Ellie's voice was barely a whisper. "Am I in trouble?" Catherine fought back tears. "No, sweetheart. You're in the hospital. The doctors are going to help your tummy feel better. I told Daddy it hurt. He said I was making it up." "I know, honey. I believe you." A commotion outside the curtain drew Catherine's attention. She heard a man's voice, slurred and agitated, arguing with hospital staff. "That's my kid in there. You can't keep me out." Seconds later, the curtain was yanked aside. Mr. Parker stood there, unshaven and smelling strongly of alcohol, even at this early hour. "What's going on? Who authorized all this?" he demanded, glaring at Catherine. Before she could respond, a tall figure in a police uniform appeared behind Mr. Parker, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "Sir, I'm Officer Mark Delaney. I need to speak with you regarding your daughter." The officer's eyes met Catherine's briefly, his expression somber but reassuring. "Ms. Thompson, I'll need to speak with you as well." Catherine nodded, suddenly aware that this situation had escalated beyond anything she could have imagined. Whatever was happening with Ellie's mysterious condition, nothing would ever be the same after today. Officer Mark Delaney led Catherine Thompson to a small consultation room near the emergency department. With his neatly pressed uniform and calm demeanor, he seemed a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding around them. "Ms. Thompson, I'm with the Family Services Division," he explained, closing the door. "The hospital contacted us due to the nature of Ellie's condition and some concerns from the medical team." Catherine nodded, her teacher's composure finally beginning to crack. "I've been worried about her for weeks. No one would listen." "I'm listening now," Officer Delaney said, his voice gentle yet professional. He opened a small notebook. "Can you tell me when you first noticed something wrong?" Catherine recounted everything. The stomach complaints, the increasing abdominal swelling, the failed attempts to contact Mr. Parker, and her visit to Ellie's apartment. "You went to her home?" Officer Delaney raised an eyebrow. "I know it wasn't protocol," Catherine admitted, "but I was desperate. The conditions there were concerning. Empty refrigerator except for takeout and beer. Ellie told me she makes her own meals, cereal and sandwiches." The officer made careful notes. "You mentioned the medical team has concerns. What have they told you?" Catherine hesitated. "Very little officially, but I overheard nurses discussing tests that would be inappropriate for a child Ellie's age." She lowered her voice. "A pregnancy test. She's only 6 years old, Officer Delaney. His expression remained neutral, but she noticed his grip tighten on his pen. We're not jumping to conclusions, Ms. Thompson, but we need to investigate all possibilities when a child presents with these symptoms. A soft knock interrupted them. A young doctor entered carrying a tablet. Officer Delaney, Dr. Martin from radiology. We've completed the initial ultrasound. And? Both Catherine and the officer asked simultaneously. There's definitely a mass in the abdomen, along with significant fluid accumulation. We need more specialized imaging to determine exactly what we're dealing with. A mass? Catherine's hand flew to her mouth. Like a tumor? We can't confirm the nature of the mass yet, Doctor. Martin replied carefully. We're consulting with specialists. After the doctor left, Officer Delaney turned back to Catherine. I need to check on Mr. Parker's interview, then visit Ellie's home. Hospital security will ensure he doesn't leave the premises until we've completed our assessment. What happens to Ellie now? Catherine asked, suddenly realizing the full implications of the situation. For now, she stays here for medical treatment. As for custody, he paused. That depends on our investigation. Do you know if there are any relatives who could take temporary custody? Ellie mentioned her mother left with her uncle. I don't know of any other family. Officer Delaney nodded grimly. I'll need to gather some of Ellie's belongings from home. Personal items, comfort objects. Could I come with you? Catherine asked impulsively. I might recognize things that would comfort her. He considered this request carefully. Normally, I wouldn't allow it, but since you've already been to the home and have insight into what might help Ellie feel secure, I'll make an exception. An hour later, they stood outside apartment 14B. Mr. Parker remained at the hospital under a supervision, so Officer Delaney used his authority to enter the apartment. Inside, the conditions were even worse than Catherine remembered. Officer Delaney documented everything methodically with a small camera. Ellie's room? He asked. Catherine pointed to a small bedroom off the main living area. Unlike the rest of the apartment, Ellie's room was relatively tidy, a child's attempt to create order in chaos. She needs her stuffed elephant, Catherine said, spotting the worn toy on the bed. She draws it in her pictures. As Officer Delaney gathered clothes from Ellie's dresser, Catherine noticed something peculiar under the bed, a shoebox decorated with stickers and crayon drawings. Officer, I found something. He knelt beside her as she carefully removed the box. Inside were drawings, dozens of them. Each depicted the same theme, a small figure with something large and round in its stomach. These date back months, Catherine whispered, noting the dates Ellie had carefully written on each paper. Beneath the drawings lay a small diary with a broken lock. Catherine hesitated, but Officer Delaney gently took it, opening to a page with large, childish handwriting. Dear Diary, my tummy hurts again today. I tried to tell Daddy, but he was sleeping. I'm scared something is growing inside me. Officer Delaney's professional demeanor cracked slightly. 6 years old, he murmured. No child should feel this alone. As they continued searching, Catherine opened Ellie's nightstand drawer and gasped. Inside was a collection of medicine bottles, over-the-counter pain relievers, antacids, even some unlabeled pills. She was self-medicating, Catherine realized aloud, horror in her voice. A 6-year-old trying to treat herself. Officer Delaney carefully bagged the medications as evidence. Ms. Thompson, I believe Ellie is very fortunate to have had you as her teacher. As they prepared to leave, Catherine noticed a family photo face down on Ellie's small desk. She turned it over to see a happier time, Ellie as a toddler with both parents, all smiling. The glass was cracked. Directly over the mother's face. We need to find out what really happened to her mother, Catherine said quietly. Officer Delaney nodded solemnly. And what's happening inside that little girl's body? The fluorescent lights of Mercy General Hospital cast harsh shadows across the waiting area where Catherine Thompson had spent the last 4 hours. She clutched Ellie's stuffed elephant, its worn fabric soft against her fingers. Nearby, Officer Delaney spoke quietly on his phone, his broad shoulders tense as he jotted notes in his small pad. When he returned to the plastic chair beside her, his expression was grim. Mr. Parker is being held for questioning. His blood alcohol level was well above the legal limit, at 10 in the morning. Catherine sighed. What about Ellie's mother? We've located her in Nevada. She claims she left because of Mr. Parker's drinking. Says she couldn't handle it anymore. She left her 6-year-old daughter with him? Catherine couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. Officer Delaney's jaw tightened. She's not interested in coming back. Said she has a new life now. The weight of this abandonment settled heavily between them. Catherine stared at the elephant in her hands, imagining Ellie clutching it during lonely nights. What happens now? She asked. The system takes over, he replied, a hint of resignation in his tone. Ellie will become a ward of the state once she's medically stable. She'll enter the foster care system while the courts determine permanent custody arrangements. The foster system? Catherine's heart sank. She'd had students in foster care before, some in wonderful homes, others bounced between placements like unwanted parcels. A harried-looking woman in a wrinkled suit approached them, balancing a coffee cup and an overflowing folder. Officer Delaney, I'm Jessica Myers, Child Protective Services. They exchanged information while Catherine listened, increasingly dismayed by the bureaucratic language. Case number, placement options, processing times. What about Ellie's medical condition? Catherine interrupted. Shouldn't that take priority over paperwork? Ms. Myers looked exhausted. Of course, her medical care comes first, but we have protocols. Protocols? Catherine stood suddenly. A little girl is suffering while adults shuffle papers. She told us for weeks that something was wrong, and nobody listened. Now everyone's concerned about forms and procedures. Officer Delaney placed a calming hand on her arm. Ms. Thompson. No, Catherine continued, years of frustration with broken systems boiling over. I've watched children fall through the cracks because of protocols. Ellie deserves better. Ms. Myers didn't seem offended. Instead, she set down her coffee with a weary nod. You're right. The system is imperfect. I have 43 active cases right now, 43 children in crisis, and I'm one person. The admission deflated Catherine's anger, replacing it with a hollow sadness. I'm sorry. I know you're doing your best. Sometimes our best isn't enough, Officer Delaney said quietly. I see it in my work every day. A doctor approached their small group, her face showing the strain of a long shift. Are you all here for Ellie Parker? They nodded, instantly alert. We've completed more comprehensive tests. The abdominal fluid is called ascites, an abnormal collection of fluid in the peritoneal cavity. What's causing it? Catherine asked. That's what's unusual. We've found what appears to be a mass in her liver. We're consulting with pediatric specialists to determine exactly what we're dealing with. A mass? Catherine repeated. Like cancer? It's too early to say definitively, but many masses are benign, especially in children. We'll know more after additional imaging. As the doctor left, Catherine felt the room spinning. Slightly. She'd been so focused on Ellie's home situation that the reality of a serious medical condition struck her anew. Officer Delaney seemed to read her thoughts. One step at a time, he said gently. First, we get her proper medical care. Then we figure out what's best for her future. Mrs. Myers cleared her throat. There is another option besides immediate foster placement. A temporary guardianship could be arranged with someone Ellie knows and trusts, with court approval, of course. Catherine and Officer Delaney exchanged glances. Someone like a family member, close friend, or... Ms. Myers looked pointedly at Catherine, a teacher who already has an established relationship with the child. Catherine's heart raced. Are you suggesting it would be temporary? Ms. Myers cautioned. Just until permanent arrangements could be made. But it might provide stability during her medical treatment. Before Catherine could respond, a nurse hurried toward them. Ellie's awake and asking for her teacher. she said breathlessly. She's quite upset, and the doctor thinks a familiar face might help calm her. Catherine rose immediately, still clutching the stuffed elephant. As she followed the nurse, she caught Officer Delaney's encouraging nod. Whatever happened next, Catherine Thompson knew one thing for certain. She would not let Ellie Parker face it alone. The pediatric ward was painted in cheerful colors that seemed at odds with the serious faces of the medical staff. Catherine followed the nurse to a small private room where monitors beeped steadily beside a bed that dwarfed its tiny occupant. Ellie lay against white pillows, her face pale but her eyes alert. When she spotted Catherine, her expression transformed from fear to relief. "Mrs. Thompson, you came back," her small voice cracked with emotion. "Of course I did, sweetheart." Catherine placed the stuffed elephant in Ellie's waiting arms. "And look who I brought, Mr. Ears." Ellie clutched the toy tightly, burying her face in its worn plush. "They keep poking me with needles," she whispered, "and my tummy still hurts." "I know, honey. The doctors are trying to figure out what's making you feel bad so they can help you get better." Catherine smoothed Ellie's hair, noticing how it had lost its usual shine. "Where's my dad?" Ellie asked, her voice small. Catherine chose her words carefully. "He's talking with some people about how to take better care of you." Ellie nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Is he mad at me for being sick?" The question broke Catherine's heart. "No, sweetheart, none of this is your fault, not one bit." A knock at the door announced Dr. Leah Chen, the pediatrics specialist who had been assigned to Ellie's case. Her youthful face belied the authority in her manner. "Hello, Ellie. How are you feeling after your nap?" Dr. Chen checked the monitors while speaking. "Still hurts," Ellie replied, pointing to her distended abdomen. "We're going to help with that," the doctor promised before turning to Catherine. "Ms. Thompson, could I speak with you outside for a moment?" In the hallway, Dr. Chen's professional demeanor remained intact, but her eyes conveyed concern. "We've scheduled Ellie for a specialized MRI tomorrow morning. The preliminary tests show abnormal liver function and a significant mass that's causing the fluid buildup in her abdomen. Is it?" Catherine couldn't bring herself to say the word cancer. "We don't know yet. Some liver masses in children are benign, not cancerous," Dr. Chen explained, "but they can still cause serious, complications if left untreated. The ascites, the fluid buildup, is a result of pressure from the mass affecting blood flow." Catherine processed this information. How could this have been missed for so long? Unfortunately, the early symptoms can be vague: stomach aches, fatigue, loss of appetite. Things adults might dismiss in children. Dr. Chen's tone held no judgment, but Catherine felt the weight of collective responsibility. When they returned to the room, they found Officer Delaney sitting beside Ellie's bed, showing her his police badge. "And this star has 7 points because each one stands for something important, like integrity and courage," he was explaining gently. "What's integrity?" Ellie asked, her curiosity momentarily overriding her discomfort. "It means doing the right thing, even when it's hard," he replied with a smile that transformed his serious face. Catherine was struck by his natural way with children. As if sensing her thoughts, he glanced up. "Ms. Thompson, good news. The judge has expedited a hearing on Ellie's temporary custody situation." Later that afternoon, Catherine found herself in a hospital conference room with Officer Delaney, Ms. Myers from CPS, and a court-appointed guardian ad litem, an attorney named Sarah Winters who would represent Ellie's legal interests. "Temporary guardianship is unusual in these circumstances," Ms. Winters explained, "but not unprecedented given the medical situation and the father's current unavailability. I've conducted an initial home assessment," Ms. Myers added, nodding to Catherine. "Ms. Thompson's residence is suitable for a child and her background check came back clean." Catherine blinked in surprise. "You checked my home? When?" "Standard procedure," Officer Delaney explained. "A colleague visited while we were at the hospital. Hope you don't mind." Catherine thought of her modest two-bedroom house with its garden and the spare room that had once been intended for a child of her own. Not at all. The hearing is tomorrow at 9 a.m., Ms. Winters continued. If the judge approves, you could become Ellie's temporary guardian during her medical treatment and recovery. The responsibility of what they were suggesting suddenly felt enormous. Catherine had taught hundreds of children, cared deeply for each one, but taking a child into her home, becoming responsible for her welfare day and night, was something altogether different. Officer Delaney seemed to sense her internal struggle. You wouldn't be doing this alone, he said quietly. I'll be involved in the case throughout. And I'll be assigned as Ellie's ongoing social worker, Ms. Myers added. Catherine thought of Ellie lying in that big hospital bed, of the empty apartment waiting for her, of the mother who didn't want to return. What do I need to do to prepare for the hearing? She asked, her decision made. As the meeting concluded, Officer Delaney walked Catherine to the elevator. This won't be easy, he warned. The system can be frustrating and Ellie's medical journey may be complicated. I've never taken the easy path when it comes to my students, Catherine replied with quiet determination. He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. I believe you, Ms. Thompson. Please call me Catherine. Mark, he offered in return, extending his hand. As they shook hands, Catherine felt something shift, the formation of an alliance that would prove more important than either of them could imagine. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Catherine's spare bedroom, illuminating walls she had hastily painted a soft yellow the night before. After the judge had granted her temporary guardianship of Ellie, a process that had been surprisingly efficient thanks to Officer Delaney's influence and the urgency of the medical situation, Catherine had worked late into the night preparing a proper space for a 6-year-old girl. The room had previously served as a home office and occasional guest room, but now it held a child-sized bed with colorful linens, a small dresser, and a bookshelf Catherine had filled with beloved stories from her classroom. Is this really all for me? Ellie asked from the doorway, her eyes wide as she clutched Mr. Ears the elephant. She had been released from the hospital that morning with a treatment plan, medication schedule, and an appointment for follow-up tests later that week. All yours, Catherine confirmed, watching emotion play across the child's face. Do you like the yellow? I thought it was cheerful like sunshine. Ellie nodded, stepping cautiously into the room as if afraid it might disappear. Despite 3 days of hospital care, her abdomen remained distended, and she moved with the careful gait of someone managing constant discomfort. I've never had yellow walls before, she said softly, or so many books. Catherine knelt to Ellie's level, mindful not to touch her tender midsection. Well, I am a teacher after all. Books are my specialty. A tentative smile flickered across Ellie's face, the first Catherine had seen since this ordeal began. That afternoon, as Catherine prepared a light soup for lunch, following the diet recommendations from Dr. Chen, the doorbell rang. Officer Delaney stood on her porch, out of uniform in jeans and a casual button-down shirt that somehow made him look even taller. He held a small gift bag in one hand. I hope I'm not intruding, he said. I wanted to see how Ellie's settling in. Not at all. Catherine welcomed him inside. We're just about to have some soup. Would you like to join us? Ellie appeared in the hallway, curious about their visitor. When she recognized Officer Delaney, she gave a small wave. Hi, Ellie, he said warmly. I brought you something. He extended the gift bag. Inside was a small nightlight shaped like a star. It changes colors, he explained. My daughter had one when she was younger. It helped when she was scared of the dark. You have a daughter? Ellie asked, examining the light with interest. Emma, she's 12 now. A shadow crossed his face briefly. She lives with her mom most of the time since her mom and I aren't together anymore. During lunch, Catherine observed the natural way Mark interacted with Ellie, drawing her out with gentle questions about her favorite books and colors. By the time they finished eating, Ellie had relaxed enough to laugh at his deliberately silly joke about a penguin with a sunburn. Later, after I had gone and Ellie was resting with a heating pad on her stomach, one of Dr. Chen's recommendations for comfort, Catherine sat at her kitchen table reviewing the medication schedule. The reality of her situation struck her suddenly. Just days ago, she had been simply a concerned teacher. Now she was responsible for a seriously ill child with complex medical and emotional needs. The weight of this responsibility felt momentarily overwhelming. Her phone chimed with a text message from Mark. "You're doing great. One day at a time. Call if you need anything, day or night." Catherine smiled, feeling less alone. Perhaps they were forming their own kind of system, one that might actually work for Ellie. The next 2 weeks established a careful routine in Catherine's home. Mornings began with Ellie's medications, followed by light breakfast and gentle activities that wouldn't strain her. Still swollen abdomen. Afternoons often included naps for Ellie and lesson planning for Catherine, who had taken temporary leave from her classroom but continued preparing materials for her substitute. Mark Delaney became a regular presence, stopping by every couple of days with updates on the case. And small treats for Ellie, a puzzle book, colored pencils, a soft blanket patterned with stars. Today, Catherine sat in Dr. Chen's office while Ellie underwent another round of imaging tests down the hall. "The medications are helping manage her symptoms," Dr. Chen explained, reviewing charts on her computer. "But they're not addressing the underlying cause. The mass hasn't reduced in size despite our initial treatments." Catherine's stomach tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means we need to consider surgical options," Dr. Chen said gently. "The biopsy results were inconclusive, but the mass is clearly affecting liver function and causing the fluid buildup to persist." The thought of Ellie facing surgery was terrifying, but Catherine maintained her composure. What would recovery look like? As Dr. Chen outlined the procedure and recovery process, Catherine's phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Important news about Parker. Meeting you at the hospital, almost there." She found him pacing in the waiting area, his expression grim despite his casual clothes. "What is it?" Catherine asked, instantly alert. "We've uncovered more about Ellie's home situation," he said quietly. The neighbor finally started talking. Turns out Parker would leave Ellie alone for days at a time while he went on drinking binges. She'd been essentially caring for herself since her mother left 6 months ago. Catherine closed her eyes briefly, imagining Ellie alone in that empty apartment, her belly growing painfully distended with no one to turn to. "There's more," Mark continued. "The mother didn't just leave with the uncle. There was a history of domestic incidents. She filed police reports 3 times but always dropped the charges. So she left her daughter in that situation?" Catherine couldn't keep the anger from her voice. "Some people only save themselves," Mark replied, his own judgment evident despite his professional tone. A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Ms. Thompson, Ellie's asking for you. She's quite upset after the tests." Catherine and Mark exchanged glances. Their conversation would have to wait. They found Ellie curled on her side in the examination room, tears streaming silently down her face. "It hurts worse today," she whispered as Catherine stroked her hair. "And I had a bad dream during the machine. I dreamed something was moving inside." "Judy," Mark knelt beside the bed. "You're safe now, Ellie. Ms. Thompson and I won't let anything bad happen to you." As they comforted the frightened child, Catherine noticed how naturally they had become a team, united in their determination to protect this vulnerable little girl from both the UB mystery inside her body and the harsh realities waiting outside the hospital walls. 3 days after Ellie's latest tests, Catherine sat at her kitchen table surrounded by medical paperwork. Insurance forms, surgical consent documents, and pamphlets about pediatric liver conditions created a paper fortress around her coffee cup. The clock read 11:45 p.m., but sleep seemed impossible. Tomorrow morning, Ellie would undergo an exploratory procedure to better determine the nature of the mass in her liver. Dr. Chen had explained it as minimally invasive, but Catherine couldn't shake her fears about Ellie being subjected to yet another medical intervention, A soft whimper from down the hall interrupted her thoughts. She found Ellie sitting up in bed, clutching Mr. Ears tightly against her chest. "Bad dream?" Catherine asked gently, sitting beside her. Ellie nodded. "I was back in my old room and nobody could hear me calling for help." "That sounds scary," Catherine acknowledged. "But it was just a dream. I can hear you perfectly now." "Mrs. Thompson?" Ellie's voice was small in the dimly lit room. "What if the doctors can't fix me?" The question hit Catherine like a physical blow. She had been asking herself the same thing, lying awake at night worrying about worst-case scenarios. "The doctors are very good at their jobs," Catherine answered carefully, "and they have lots of different ways to help you feel better." "But what if they can't?" Ellie persisted. Catherine took a deep breath. "Then we'll find other doctors. We'll keep trying until we find the right help. I promise, Ellie, I won't give up." This seemed to satisfy the child, who settled back against her pillows. "Can you stay until I fall asleep?" "Of course." Catherine watched as Ellie's breathing eventually slowed into the rhythm of sleep, her small face finally peaceful. The responsibilities of guardianship felt overwhelming in that moment. The medical decisions, the emotional support, the uncertain future stretching before them. For the first time since this journey began, Catherine allowed herself to cry, silent tears sliding down her cheeks as she wondered if she was truly capable of being everything this child needed. Morning brought a gray drizzle that matched Catherine's mood as she drove Ellie to the hospital. The child was quiet, having been instructed not to eat or drink before the procedure. In the surgical waiting area, they found Mark already there, a children's book in his hands. "I thought we might need some distraction," he explained, showing Ellie the colorful cover about a brave little dragon. While a nurse took Ellie to prep, Catherine collapsed into a chair beside Mark, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. "Rough night?" he asked gently. "I don't know if I can do this," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm a teacher, not a parent. What if I make the wrong decisions? What if I'm not enough for her?" Mark considered her words carefully. "After my wife died, I felt exactly the same way about raising Emma. I was a police officer, not a single parent. I didn't know the first thing about helping a 3-year-old through grief." Catherine looked up, surprised by this personal revelation. "I made plenty of mistakes," he continued. "Served dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets for dinner way too often. Forgot about picture day. Once I accidentally washed her favorite stuffed bunny with the red towels and it came out pink." He smiled at the memory. "But we survived, because caring deeply counts for more than getting everything right." "How did you manage?" Catherine asked. "One day at a time, some days 1 hour at a time." His eyes met hers. "And I didn't do it alone. I had help, friends, family, even Emma's teachers. Like you're helping us now," Catherine realized aloud. Mark nodded. "Exactly. You're not alone in this, Catherine." The simple use of her first name felt intimate, a reminder that they had become more than professional acquaintances thrown together by circumstance. A nurse appeared in the doorway. "We're ready for Ellie now." As they walked with Ellie to the surgical doors, the little girl suddenly reached out, taking one of their hands in each of hers. "My 2 guardians," she said with surprising clarity for a 6-year-old. "That's what you are, right?" Catherine and Mark exchanged a glance over Ellie's head, a moment of silent understanding that, whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The surgical waiting room clock seemed to move in slow motion. 2 hours had passed since Ellie disappeared behind the double doors, and Catherine had memorized every detail of the space. The faded blue chairs, the stack of outdated magazines, the quiet hum of the vending machine in the corner. Mark returned with 2 coffee cups, handing one to Catherine. "Still no word?" She shook her head, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Dr. Chen said it could take 3 hours. They're being thorough." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that develops between people who have weathered storms together. Outside, the drizzle had transformed into steady rain that streaked the waiting room windows. "The school called this morning," Catherine said, breaking the silence. "They've been wonderful about my leave of absence, but they needed some paperwork completed." "How? Are your students doing with the substitute?" "Mrs. Gonzalez is excellent, but apparently they've made me about 30 get-well cards for Ellie. The principal wants to know if they can deliver them somehow." Mark smiled. That would mean a lot to her. Maybe when she's feeling stronger. "I was thinking the same thing." Catherine took a sip of coffee. "Did you ever learn more about Ellie's mother? Whether she might reconsider her position?" Mark's expression darkened. "I spoke with her again yesterday. She's remarried, has a new baby on the way. Made it very clear she has moved on from that chapter of her life." The disgust in his voice was evident. "How could anyone abandon their child like that?" Catherine whispered. "Some people aren't cut out to be parents," Mark replied. "My ex-wife wasn't abusive or neglectful like Parker. But after my wife died, she decided parenting was too hard. She sees Emma once a month now, if that." Catherine felt a new understanding of Mark's dedication to Ellie's case. "I'm sorry. Emma's the one who suffered. That's why—" He paused, collecting his thoughts. "That's why cases like Ellie's hit close to home." Their conversation was interrupted by a hospital volunteer who approached with a clipboard. "Ms. Thompson, there's been a call from Westbrook Elementary. Something about needing access to Ellie's desk to retrieve personal items?" Catherine frowned. "That's odd. Principal Garner has my cell number." After the volunteer left, Mark's police instincts kicked in. "Let me make a call." He stepped away, phone in hand, and returned looking troubled. "The school didn't call, but there's been a reporter asking questions, trying to get information about Ellie. The story's getting attention. Elementary teacher rescues. Student with mysterious condition." "That's ridiculous," Catherine protested. "I didn't rescue anyone. I just did what any decent person would do." "Not everyone would take guardianship of a student," Mark pointed out gently. "You went above and beyond, Catherine." Before she could respond, Dr. Chen appeared, still in surgical scrubs, her face revealing nothing as she approached. "Ms. Thompson, Officer Delaney," she greeted them. "Ellie's in recovery. The procedure went as well as we could have hoped." "And?" Catherine couldn't keep the anxiety from her voice. "We were able to obtain better samples of the mass. Our pathologist is examining them now, but I can tell you it's not what many feared. It's not consistent with malignancy." "Not cancer?" Catherine clarified, hardly daring to hope. "The mass appears to be a benign hepatic adenoma, unusual in a child Ellie's age, but not unheard of. What is concerning is its size and location, which is causing significant pressure on surrounding structures and the fluid buildup in her abdomen." "Can it be removed?" Mark asked. "Potentially, yes. We're consulting with specialists at Children's Memorial about surgical options. But first, we need to address the immediate discomfort. We've drained most of the excess fluid, which should provide significant relief." Catherine felt dizzy with relief. "When can we see her?" "She'll be in recovery for another hour, then moved to a room. You can see her then." Dr. Chen hesitated. "There is something else we discovered during the procedure. The imaging revealed evidence of previous injuries, healed fractures that weren't properly treated." Mark's jaw tightened. "How old?" "Various ages, some probably from before she was in school." Dr. Chen's professional demeanor softened. "Slightly. She's been in pain for a very long time, in more ways than one." After Dr. Chen left, Catherine and Mark absorbed this new information in stunned silence. Finally, Catherine spoke, her voice steady with determination. "She won't be in pain anymore. Not if I have anything to say about it." Mark reached over and took her hand, a simple gesture of solidarity that conveyed more than words could express. Together, they waited for the moment they could see Ellie, the child who had unexpectedly brought them together and was slowly healing in more ways than one. In the recovery room, Ellie slept peacefully for the first time in months, her abdomen noticeably less distended. unaware of the two guardians keeping vigil, or the medical team conferring about her future just outside the door. A week after the procedure, Ellie sat at Catherine's kitchen table coloring, while Catherine prepared a light lunch. The difference in the child was remarkable. Her eyes brighter, her movements less guarded since the fluid had been drained from her abdomen. Though still visibly swollen, Ellie's stomach no longer caused the constant pain that had been her daily companion for months. The temporary drain the doctors had placed allowed continued relief, while they consulted on the best approach for removing the mass. "Mrs. Thompson," Ellie said, looking up from her drawing, "when can I go back to school?" Catherine placed a plate of apple slices beside Ellie's coloring book. "Dr. Chen wants you to rest a bit longer, but maybe we could arrange a short visit to see your classmates soon." "Will they think I'm weird now?" Ellie asked, her voice small. "Of course not," Catherine assured her. "They miss you. Remember all those cards they made?" The colorful stack of handmade get-well wishes had decorated Ellie's hospital room and now held a place of honor on her bedroom bookshelf. The doorbell rang, and Catherine opened it to find Mark holding a folder and wearing an expression that signaled important news. "How's our patient today?" he asked, smiling at Ellie. "Dr. Chen says I'm being very brave," Ellie reported proudly. "And look, my tummy doesn't stick out as much anymore." While Ellie returned to her coloring, Mark and Catherine stepped into the living room to speak privately. "The district attorney has formally charged Parker with neglect and endangerment," Mark said quietly. "With the medical evidence and his history, he's looking at serious consequences. What about Ellie's mother? Will she be charged too?" Mark shook his head. "Abandonment is harder to prosecute. But here's the good news. Parker has agreed to voluntarily terminate his parental rights as part of a plea agreement." Catherine's eyes widened. "What does that mean for Ellie?" "It means she'll be legally free for adoption," Mark explained. "No lengthy court battles, no waiting for the system to slowly remove parental rights." The implication hung in the air between them. "I've been thinking," Catherine began hesitantly. "My temporary guardianship expires in 3 weeks. "I know," Mark nodded. "That's actually what I came to discuss." Before he could continue, Ellie called from the kitchen. "Mrs. Thompson, my tummy feels funny again." They rushed to find Ellie doubled over in her chair, face contorted in pain. The front of her shirt was wet where the surgical drain had leaked. "Something's wrong," Catherine said, already reaching for her phone to call Dr. Chen's emergency number. Within 20 minutes they were racing to the hospital, Mark driving while Catherine sat in the back with Ellie, who drifted in and out of consciousness. At the emergency entrance, a team was waiting. Dr. Chen herself met them at the doors. "The drain may have shifted, or there could be an infection," she explained as Ellie was transferred to a gurney. "We need to get her to imaging right away." As Ellie was wheeled away, she reached out a small hand. "Don't leave me," she pleaded, her eyes finding Catherine and Mark. "We're right here," Catherine promised, hurrying alongside the gurney. "Right here with you." In the chaotic moments that followed, as medical staff swarmed around Ellie and machines beeped urgently, Catherine and Mark stood together, united in their concern for the child who had unexpectedly become the center of both their worlds. The fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor cast harsh shadows as Catherine and Mark paced outside the imaging department. 2 hours had passed since Ellie had been rushed in for emergency scans, and the waiting had become almost unbearable. "Family of Ellie Parker?" A new doctor appeared, introducing himself as Dr. Ramirez, a specialist from Children's Memorial. "I'm her guardian." Catherine stepped forward, with Mark beside her. "We need to talk about what we've found," Dr. Ramirez said, guiding them to a small consultation room. Inside, they found Dr. Chen and another physician studying images on a screen. The tension in the room was palpable. "The good news is that Ellie is stable," Dr. Chen began. "The drain didn't shift, as we feared, but there was a complication we didn't anticipate." Dr. Ramirez pointed to the screen. "This mass in Ellie's liver is larger and more complex than initially assessed. It appears to be what we call a mesenchymal hamartoma, an extremely rare benign tumor that can grow rapidly in children. The unusual presentation confused earlier diagnostics, Dr. Chen added. These typically present in much younger children or infants. Ellie's case is atypical. But it's not cancer? Catherine sought confirmation, holding tightly to Mark's hand without realizing she had reached for it. No, it's not cancer, Dr. Ramirez assured them. But it's serious and requires immediate intervention. The tumor is creating pressure that's affecting multiple organs and causing the fluid buildup to return quickly. What does that mean for Ellie? Mark asked, his voice steady despite the concern. Etched on his face, the doctors exchanged glances. She needs surgery, Dr. Ramirez stated firmly. Not exploratory this time. A procedure to remove the tumor entirely. It's delicate due to the location, but I specialize in these cases. The risks? Catherine asked, dreading the answer. All. Surgeries carry risks, Dr. Chen acknowledged. But the greater risk would be doing nothing. This tumor won't stop growing on its own. As they discussed surgical options and timing, Catherine felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. The diagnosis was serious but clear. No more mystery, no more vague explanations about Ellie's condition. For the first time, they had concrete answers and a path forward. When they were finally allowed to see Ellie, they found her sleeping peacefully, the pain medication providing temporary relief. Her small hand rested atop the hospital blanket, and Catherine gently took it in her own. We're going to get through this, she whispered, as much to herself as to Ellie. Mark stood on the other side of the bed, his presence solid and reassuring. Together, he added quietly, meeting Catherine's eyes over the sleeping child who had brought them into each other's lives. Outside the window, the first stars of evening appeared in the darkening sky, small points of light breaking through the darkness, much like the hope now emerging after weeks of uncertainty. 6 weeks after Ellie's successful surgery, Catherine's living room was filled with balloons and streamers. A homemade banner proclaimed, "Welcome home, Ellie," though she had actually been home for nearly a month. Today was special for a different reason. Are you nervous? Mark asked Catherine quietly as they arranged cupcakes on a tray. A little, she admitted, but it feels right. The doorbell rang and Ellie raced to answer it, moving with the carefree energy of a healthy child, her abdomen now flat and healing well, the massive tumor completely removed. They're here, she announced excitedly. Ms. Myers from Child Protective Services entered with Sarah Winters, the Guardian ad. Lead 'em, both carrying official-looking folders and warm smiles. Is it time? Ellie asked, bouncing on her toes. Almost, Ms. Myers laughed. We need to sign some papers first. While the adults handled the paperwork at the dining table, Ellie sat between Catherine and Mark, watching with solemn importance as each signature was added. And that's it, Ms. Winters finally announced. Congratulations to all of you. Ellie looked up at Catherine, her eyes shining. So you're really my mom now? Forever and ever? Forever and ever, Catherine confirmed, her voice thick with emotion as she pulled Ellie into a gentle hug. Mark cleared his throat, clearly fighting his own emotions. And if it's okay with you, Ellie, I'd like to ask Catherine an important question soon. He winked at the little girl who giggled knowingly. Later that evening, after the celebration had ended and their guests had gone, Catherine tucked Ellie into bed in her yellow room. No longer a temporary space, but her permanent home. Mrs. Thompson, Mom, Ellie said thoughtfully. Remember when my tummy hurt all the time and nobody listened? I remember. Catherine nodded, smoothing Ellie's hair. I'm glad you heard me, Ellie yawned. And I'm glad they found the monster in my belly. It wasn't a monster, sweetheart. Just something that didn't belong there. Ellie touched her healing abdomen, where only a fading scar remained. Now my belly doesn't hurt anymore, and you know what's inside it. Now? What, sweetie? Ellie smiled sleepily. Love. My belly is full of love now. From the doorway, Mark watched the tender scene, the teacher who had become a mother and the student who had become a daughter. In the quiet of that moment, surrounded by the family they had unexpectedly created. Together, they had all found healing far beyond the physical, proof that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings arise from the most difficult journeys.